Network. And today's topic is to-dos and how we often get swept up in the doing and forget about being present. So we'll talk about that and how we can really shift the quality of our experience through a simple shift of mind, perhaps. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get settled in and present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and feel that clean, crisp oxygen just flooding into your lungs and flowing into your bloodstream and nourishing all your cells and your organs. And as you exhale, exhale any tension and stress, relax your shoulders, maybe roll them around. And let's take another deep breath in through your nose. This time, hold it and imagine that it's sparkling white light lighting you up, electrifying your cells and all the molecules that make them and the electrons that fly around them and connect you with the world beyond. And as we exhale, exhale any tension, maybe roll your neck, roll your head. And now let's just gently press our palms together and feel your fingers against your palms. Slowly, softly rub them together and feel that. Feel the space between your palms and your fingers, and just allow yourself to sort of sink into the deliciousness of that and slow down and be present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. It's great to be here with you. And let's talk about to-dos. I've spoken with a couple clients just yesterday about this getting into a focused mindset where it's kind of like, I have all this to do, stay out of my way, just I'm going to go and run through and do everything that I need to do. And maybe you've experienced that kind of focus yourself, where it's just like, get out of my way, make way because I'm barreling through here. And the I have a memory that is just such a perfect example of this. Um, I was helping somebody move, and they were so focused on getting everything moved that in the process, they pretty much steamrolled everybody else that was there to help. Like it was where we were plastering ourselves to the wall practically to stay out of their way, because it was like a fast moving freight train, and it was pretty much an unbearable experience for all of us who were surrounding. And I can't imagine that it was a positive experience for this person that was so locomotive minded. It was crazy. I mean, really crazy. And I've never seen such an extreme. And it was a focus on the doing to the exclusion of really any beingness. It was kind of like just becoming robotic and oblivious of the surrounding environment. And so just to talk about this dynamic and what's available if we instead enable ourselves to presence ourselves, like as we find ourselves trying to shut everything out and kind of shut ourselves down, uh, if we instead choose to lean into the circumstance, there's so much more richness available. So for instance, one of the clients I spoke with yesterday was in the process of packing up, closing up a property for the winter and packing up all kinds of things to be able to move to a different state, to relocate after closing up this property. And there were lots of there was a big sense of responsibility to be sure that everything got done, and they were experiencing tremendous stress and tension partly because they were identifying with the to-doing of it, and it was a big to-do, so to speak. Um, but also because they were holding all of these tasks in their head. And when we hold all these ideas of things we need to do in our head, what happens is our head is always churning, trying to remember to keep everything in line. And when we do something as simple as putting it on paper or putting it in a list on a computer where we can sort of do a brain dump, then that in and of itself can give us a greater experience of relaxation or presence. It can allow our minds to quiet from that constant roil that can really make us crazy and tremendously anxious and nervous. And what happens is too that when we keep these things in our heads, we often perceive them as bigger than they are or less approachable than they are, because there's just so much, and it builds on itself internally. When we put it on paper, we put it in a place where we can see it from out of our minds, then we have the ability to interact with it. We can assign how much time it'll take to do each different thing and then plan accordingly. We can see that some of those things aren't priorities, for example. And all of this practice of getting stuff out of our head, looking at ways that we can perhaps organize it, reduces the experience of overwhelm, which then allows us to be able to be more present. But even more important than that, what we get to do is look at a shift of focus from the doing or the thing that needs the doing to what our intention is. Like what is guiding this frenzy of doingness, and what is super powerful is to, as much as it seems counterintuitive perhaps, but what's super powerful is to allow ourselves to take a meta moment and get back to our intention. So for this client who was relocating and closing up this property, one of the things that they became aware of in our conversation was that this transition was a banner transition. It was a I I coached them to look at this as a passage, and a symbolic as well as an actual passage from one dimension of it, their experience, into another, to be able to recognize that there was a celebration to be had, to be present to the doingness as a ritual, where being present to putting plastic on the windows and to packing up the belongings and to closing out this space with ceremony and appreciation for a closure and transition in life. And just out of creating that new context, just out of redefining the container for the experience they were having, the experience shifted from one of anxiety to one of reverie and appreciation and celebration and recognition. And so when we're in the midst of all kinds of hustle and bustle, I mean, it could be, making dinner for the family, it could be, doing something with the kids. If we're able to separate ourselves for a moment from the doingness and reshift our focus. And the objective is not to get dinner on the table. Why are you getting dinner on the table? To nurture the family, right? So if the intention is to nurture the family, maybe the way that we go about getting dinner on the table shifts, and we become more present to what our true objective is. And so the goal might be to get the dinner on the table, but the intention is to nourish and nurture the family. And so in this coaching work, one of the big shifts of focus that we put our attention to is moving from goals to intentions, from doing to moving from inspiration, from external goals to internal inspiration. Hello, Hope. Good afternoon to you. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about to dos and how to move more to bees or from doingness to beingness. So the thing that we want to be able to do is to lean in to these moments when we're so frenzied and frantic, to take a breath and refocus from the tasks at hand to the intention behind the tasks. And that can shift the whole context and the whole experience of doing those tasks. When we get in that frenzied mode, what's happening is so much that we're trying to fight through our own resistance. And so there's first the resistance, then there's fighting the resistance, and somewhere under there, there's the intention for what it is we're trying to accomplish. And so, in the example of the extreme mover, where we were all plastered against the wall to protect ourselves from this raging train, what was happening there really for that person was that they were fighting through their overwhelm. So there was an extreme overwhelm about what needed to be done, and they were pushing through it. And the act of pushing through creates more resistance also. So when we allow ourselves to, instead of disconnect, because that's often how we function in these situations, when there's so much to do, we just put our head down and plow through, right? And anything in the way be damned, right? Well, what if instead we allowed ourselves to be present to, like, if it's moving and we're going through and packing and oh, here's another situation where there was a death in the family, and immediately after, I was charged along with someone else to handle all the belongings and the transition of this person having passed. And this other person that I was working with went into this overdrive mode where it was just do, get everything done, get rid of this, get rid of that. And it was, for me, it put me in a tailspin, because there was no opportunity to process what was going on, what happened, what what there was no ability to presence myself in that whirlwind to the loss and to grieve or savor this person, because there was such a doingness around me. It left me completely in more traumatized than the passing had been initially. You know, it just added trauma to trauma to trauma. And so had I been able to settle in and be present with my experience and be present to who this person had been in my life, the whole experience would have been deeper and richer and less traumatic. So I was speaking with another client also yesterday, talking about all these things that needed to get done. And in the conversation, we were talking about how we can tend to be our own worst taskmasters. And if you think about the word taskmaster, it's talking about mastering tasks. And what are tasks? Tasks are to-dos, essentially. And the question that brought to mind is, do we want to master tasks, or do we want to master the things that are the makings of our dreams? And when we are putting our attention on doing the task, we often lose sight of what the intention and the vision is behind that task. So what we want to do is, what we want to be is focused more clearly on our intentions, on our vision, and allow the doingness that's part of that to come from the inspiration of that vision. Because it's a shift of frequency. It's a profound shift of frequency. And I can feel it even just speaking about it in my heart, from this constriction, which is got to do it, got to get it done, to here's my vision, and here are the things along the way that get to be accomplished in service of that vision and that mission. And I'm wondering if you feel that distinction, if you can feel the shift from vision, which is expansive, that is inspiring us and pulling us forward, to uh, tasks and doing, which is constrictive, which we need to force ourselves forward into, where we're pushing into rather than being pulled forward or called forward. So I'm wondering if you have any experience of that, and moments when you've been able to sort of settle back and say, well, why am I doing this? What's my why? And connect to the why, which is the inspiration. And then there doesn't have to be all this urgency and panic around getting things done, because when you refocus on your intention, oftentimes it shifts the context, first of all, but oftentimes we also get to see that some of the things that were on that list maybe didn't have to be there. And maybe some of the things are not as high priority as we had imagined them to be. And maybe they're not in as full service to to what we want to bring forth in the world as it looked. And I know we talk a lot about energy and the energy of our experience and of our thoughts and of our feelings. But the fact is that we are energetic beings, that everything is energy. And as we're shifting into a new paradigm and a new expression of possibility as humans on the planet, we get to be more conscious of the nature of our being and our essential nature, and carry that into the way that we operate in the world. And the big thing about this doing and being thing, and I've spoken about it before, but it's really, really a big deal in terms of shifting paradigms. The doingness is is a way to, and a way that we're enculturated to externalize our value and our worth. And so if you think about our culture, and I know I've spoken about this before too, but if you think about our culture, how do we value each other? What do you do for a living? How much money do you make? Where do you live? What kind of house do you have? What kind of clothes do you wear? What kind of car do you drive? What kind of meditations do you do? What kind of practices have you had? What kind of travels have you done? You know, who do you know? What kinds of social contributions have you made? All of these things are ways that we evaluate other people's and our own worth. Like, I didn't do enough today, so I'm bad and lazy and wrong. Or we can go on and on. You know, I didn't, I'm not earning enough money, so I'm not worthy. Or we go on about how we judge ourselves through externalities. And the thing about that is, we not only judge ourselves, but we judge others and are judged by others. And what it is essentially saying is that I'm worth more or less than you are based on all these external evidences, right? In other words, let's say you make $200,000 a year and I make $10,000 a year, then you're worth more than I am. Your life is worth more than I am. Well, that's, or mine is. And that's just not, it's first of all, it's not true. And it is sort of this insane paradigm that we live within, where we have commodified human life. We've commodified not just human life, but all life. We've commodified the planet, in addition to lives of animals and humans and everything else. It's like, if it I remember everything I did in my life, my dad would say, "Are you making money at it?" And that was rarely the case, that I got paid for what I did, because I just did things that I wanted to do. And from his vantage point, it didn't count if it didn't make money. And what I realized is that this is the fundamental shift of culture that we get to make, to create a world that is a world of justice and a world of fairness and a world of connection, is where we recognize that no one human is more valuable than another human. Now we can say that's not true. We can say, but look, this person has contributed to all of these, has created all of this difference in the world, and we revere people who do different things in the world. And the thing is that we tend to, I mean, if you bottom line that, you're saying that some people deserve to have breath more than others, and some people are a waste. I've actually heard people say that person is a waste of breath and a waste of life. And um, I I am inclined to say what happens, or to look at what happens, and to want to experience what happens when we recognize that each of us is worthy of life because we're here, just because we are, just because we exist. And there is, um, beyond that, there's story about what's valuable and what's not valuable, and what's a contribution and what's not a contribution. And um, we are an organism, or we are parts of a grander organism. Good morning, Danette. Welcome, welcome. This grander, we can imagine that each of us is a cell in this grander universe, in this organism that is a grander universe. And all of those cells are contributory. The viral components, the bacteria, the every portion of our being. Hi, Tammy. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And welcome to everybody else. So what we're talking about is valuing life, for life's sake, and getting caught up in the to-dos rather than the steps that we take to our vision, like being driven by goals rather than by intentions and visions, is a profound and, I believe, essential transition for us to make as we evolve into our next expression as human beings on the planet. You know, in order to make this dimensional shift, we get to change our baseline. And the baseline isn't that I have to perform to be worthy. You don't have to perform to be worthy. You are worthy just by virtue of your being here. And that means that the doingness is not something that is tied to our self-worth. The things that we do is not who we are. And the things that we do not make us worthy or unworthy. The things that we do are the things that we do. And I know this probably flies in the face of our culture, but you know, because we're a culture of celebrity, right? We put people on pedestals, and we elevate people and revere people for their contributions to humanity. And we can do that as long as we find a place of reverence for the multitude of other expressions of life expressing itself on this planet. And it's a really counterintuitive thing to realize that that by releasing the notion of goals and doingness and focusing more on beingness, that we can actually create more profound impact in the world. But we can. And so when we're caught in this frenzy of doing, let's take a breath, step back, and look at what's the intention. You know, it's like I want a clean house, so I'm going crazy cleaning the house, and I'm screaming at everybody else in my path because they're messing things up. Well, what's the intention of having a clean house? You know, is it to have a lovely place to live in? And is it about the place? Because again, that's externalizing. Is it about the feel of the place? You know, so by connecting with the intentionality, then we can even just make the cleaning itself a whole different experience, because we're brightening the environment to feel better in it, to feel more expansive or calmer or whatever it is. So we can be putting our attention on the intention, and then that intention powers the doing from an entirely different place of being. So I guess that's it for today. And looking at how, rather than disconnecting to do our to-dos, maybe lean in to find out what the intention is behind it and connect with that. And that will make the whole process much more smooth and allow you to be present for the opportunities of that experience that might otherwise have eluded you. So for both these clients that I was telling you about yesterday, they had a rich experience of the to-dos that they were doing, and they were moved and inspired by that engagement rather than being at the effect of it. And Dido, so glad. I love when you chime in, Dido. It's always so rich. So Dido says, I love your distinction between intentions and inspiration and being versus doing and to-dos and judging a sense of worth. You always, always come up with the most succinct summaries and encapsulation of what's being said, Dido. Thank you for that. And Tammy, you have a wonderful day too, and I so appreciate you and everybody else who joins us, and I so appreciate you guys for chiming in and saying hello to let me know that you're here, and also for engaging. It means the world. So lots and lots and lots of love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I so enjoy this time we share. And I think you'll enjoy checking out the other amazing programming on Enlightened World Network. Until next time, be and allow your beingness to power your doingness.